when I got up on my hind legs and I said, now then, you are the generation of young Israelis who must make peace with your neighbors and blah, blah, blah. And they went from, Roger, to, it was uncanny. They went from that to, what the talking about? We're not going to make peace with anybody. Are you crazy? They're animals. And that, I mean, they didn't say all of that, but they went very, very quiet. Anyway, we left and I went back the next year and went on an extended tour with a lovely lady called Allegra Pacheo, I think it's her name. And we went all over the West Bank, and it was chilling beyond anything that I could ever have imagined to see back then in 2006 what was going on. And the absolute disdain and disgust with which me with the British passport in a UNRWA vehicle was treated by all the young Israeli border guards and people. I remember thinking at the time, if they're like that to me, what must they be like to the Palestinians? And of course we know. And now, to bring it entirely up to date, we know exactly what they're like to the Palestinians because they are, as we speak, committing genocide in Gaza.
I mean, you've seen so much in the time that you've been involved in Palestinian solidarity work, from the time that you became more proactive in the BDS movement.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering how specifically the events that have transpired since October 7th have affected you, and how maybe that's...
Like anybody with a heart,
right.
I spend my life teetering on the verge of tears.
Yes. Well,
because you can't possibly put yourself in that position, in their position, those mothers and fathers, those children, those 2.3 million, well, a bit less now, people living in Gaza, being bombarded by F-16s day and night, week after week after week. One cannot even begin to imagine what it must be like. And that it's being cheered on by the most powerful empire in the world is disgusting beyond all belief. And not to mention B'nai B'rith in your country. And Trudeau, he's cheering it all on as well. What is wrong with these people? How can they possibly be doing that? How can they still be trying to cast the Israelis as victims? I'm sorry, my voice was beginning to rise then because it's so insane what they're doing. And what the Israelis are doing is just, it's beyond all imagination. It's beyond our capacity to imagine such evil.
It's a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask you, I mean, more generally, do you think that this says something about the dark side of humanity, the evil that people are still capable of?
Yeah, well, now we're getting philosophical. And now we have to bring Yahweh into it. God has to enter the conversation at some point, because if you look at it very specifically in terms of what's going on there, God is evoked constantly. My father, I have to say, was a deeply avowed Christian. That's why my father was a pacifist, and why he was a conscientious objector. When he was called up in 1939, he said, no, I can't. I'm a Christian. I can't kill anyone. Okay, so they said, well, actually they said to him, will you drive an ambulance in London? He said, yes, I will. And he went and drove an ambulance from the beginning of the war until 1941, when, having become politicized to some considerable extent, he had joined the Communist Party. He decided that the need to fight the Nazis trumped his Christianity. So he went back to the conscription board and said, excuse me, I've changed my mind. Oh, who are you? Waters here. Look, this chap's got a degree. Officer material. And that was the end of it. So he did his basic training and then officer training, and then he went to North Africa or to Italy, far north, and he was killed.
Yes. I wanted to actually ask about your beloved father because I know that he's Eric Waters was commemorated in Italy decades later after World War II. And I know that you have a memory of him from the time you were around 5 months, if I'm correct. So I'm wondering if that figures in somehow into your activism today.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly enough, I do a song every night that talks about my elder brother, John, who was 2 years older than me. And how he used to sit on my father's knee when my father was home on leave when he was doing his training, basic training and officer training and stuff like that. That's in the show every night. So you get a picture of my family and with my big brother, me, my mother and my father. And we see that. And I say at the end of the song, I was mercifully spared the memories that they shared. That's my father and my big brother, because I was only 5 months old when Daddy died. So I have no actual memory of my father. But I can't tell you the story about the death of my father on February the 18th, 1944, without my heart and soul going back to Gaza. Now, I mean, that's how much it affects my life now. And everybody almost that I speak to, it's so unspeakable what the Israelis are doing in Gaza that I feel my whole body revolting against it with every breath that I take. But I'm happy to, talk about the past as well.
To your credit, you're so tenacious, despite all the pushback from some of these groups, as the one you mentioned in Canada.
But now I breathe, my friends.
And so I'm wondering, really, where do you think that stems from? Where do you draw your strength from, despite this constant pushback that seems to be coming from all directions?
My mother. My father was dead. My mother wasn't. And there's this story I tell, which is true. I'll tell it very quickly. When I was about 13, I was struggling with something. I've no idea what it was, some question what. And my mother could see I was, and she's looking over and she goes, "What is it?" "Oh, Mum, nothing. I'm just..." She said, "Listen, come here. I'm going to give you some advice. All through your life, Roger, you're going to come up against knotty problems, things that you have to think through and work out and decide what to do about, make decisions. So here's my advice. When that happens to you, read, and then read some more. Find out everything that there is to know about whatever it is that is troubling you. Study the history, and don't just read the opinions of people who agree with you on it. Read everything. Find out from all sides of it. When you've done that, the hard work is over." "What do you mean?" Well, you've done all the heavy lifting. "Well, what do I do then, Mum?" And she said, "You do the right thing." Mum, thanks. What an incredible lesson to give an adolescent. If only that's what we were teaching our children, instead of teaching our children, as they do in Israel, that Palestinians are animals, that they're subhuman, listening to Eilert Shekhar, we must kill all the little snakes. And if there's a pregnant woman with a little snake in her belly, kill her. What? This is what you're teaching your children? No. Eilert Shekhar, take a leaf out of my mother's book. Teach your children to do the right thing.
It's such an important point, Roger, because I do wonder whether people are losing that sensibility sometimes. There's so many distractions. We're constantly being pushed to buy, to self-present in new ways. And I wonder whether people are losing sight of just that, of doing the right thing, despite...
Yeah, many people. They are subject to propaganda, and as you mentioned, the mainstream media.